Can we have a round of applause for the Blackweek organizers,
Yes.
please? When I was sitting in the Mad Men Black Women session, which was amazing, I just felt something in the air. Like almost electrifying vibes. And I turned to the person who was sitting next to me, Taylor, if she's here, and I said, yep. And I said that. You know, isn't there something magical in the air? And then she dropped one word of wisdom on me. It's safety. And so I want us to all just ground ourselves in that energy. You know, there's no nervousness. There's no people looking at me. What am I going to say? Is it going to be right? Will I be judged? This is a perfectly, as elegant as it is, I love that part too. But they created a safe space. And it's something that I can honestly say in my 40 years on this earth at a conference in marketing for almost 20 years, I have never experienced it. So thank you all so much. So who in the audience has been mystified by the sheer volume of multiple and interchangeable meanings that the word multicultural takes on in our day-to-day work? That's pretty much unanimous. I agree. The other day, to sort of test this out, I shared a LinkedIn post, this is my way, and asked people to put the word multicultural into the search bar. If you do that, you just see it refers to everything under the sun aside from anybody who is white. And I think, you know, white people also have a culture. So it's interesting. Don't worry, guys, the intro will be over soon. I wanted to share a quick sentence from my friend Miles Worthington from his Adweek article, why we should start using the term underestimated audiences. And he said, you can't say I want to get a diverse hire for a job. You can't say we should go after diverse audiences. This is where specificity is important. If your organization has a deficit of black people, then say you want to hire a black executive. If research is telling you your product would appeal to Latina audiences, that's who you need to specifically target. Being general with your approach will always yield generic results. And it's our responsibility to move the industry toward a new paradigm, because as the great Andre Gray, who spoke, says in my book, which as of today is available for pre-order. I can't believe it's the same day.
You have a book, Lola?
He says in the book,
Let's go.
kicking off one of the chapters, advertising is the one influence in our lives that we have no control of. So today we're going to talk about how we can get our peers to do this in a more responsible way by sharpening our word choice. And that's all you're going to hear from me, because I've got the experts here. So I want to start with a question for everyone. If you just tell us a little bit about your career journey, whatever you want to share, and why it sort of creates an importance of this topic in your mind.
Hello, everybody. You're probably tired of seeing me at this point. My name is Dabo Che. I'm the CEO and founder of Che Creative, as well as a co-founder of Heirloom, the first black and woman-owned holding company in the advertising and marketing space. For me, my journey in advertising has always been one of disruption. I didn't come into it, as most of us do, through traditional ways. I came in as a filmmaker, as an artist. I knew I was not going to be a starving artist. My parents worked too hard. And so I was like, I'm gonna be creative. I'm gonna get messages out. I'm gonna speak to the people, but I'm gonna sure as hell make some money doing it. And so for me, it's always been, you know, taking a disruptive stance of trying to say something that I haven't seen expressed enough. So whether that means my start in, you know, kind of interjecting myself into the creative department when I was in the production department, or whether that meant bringing a different point of view to my general market agencies that I was happening to work for at the time, or if that meant even being in a multicultural run shop, or we'll say multicultural, we'll say urban.
There's the rub.
We'll unpack all of the words that have been used in the diaspora, but even when it comes to that, to being able to disrupt what it means to be multicultural, what it means to be of culture, what it means to be black. At some point I was working in some shops, and it seemed like if you didn't do a commercial or a campaign that didn't have the 3 Bs, you guys know the 3 Bs? Basketball, barbershop, barbecue. If you didn't have one of the 3 Bs in your campaign, the client would probably be like, I don't know, it just
doesn't feel right?
It just doesn't feel right. It's just there's something missing. And so disrupting that premonition of what it is to be black, or what it is to be brown, or what it is to be of culture has always been my point of view. And so, I'm just here to kick shit up.
Thank you. Dr. Gabriel. Oh, and really quick, sorry, before I am terribly rude. My mother's in the audience. She's never seen me on stage before. She took the train in just to be with you guys. So thank you for coming, Mommy.
I wish you told me that before I cursed. I'm so sorry.
I mean, listen, she's married to my dad. She gets it.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Wonderful. Hi, y'all. Well, I won't claim to be a veteran marketer. I am a kind of a unicorn and a relative newcomer to this industry, which I think now shapes what I do and my mission is in advertising. And I spent close to 10 years of my career in the worlds of academia and grassroots organizing. So I trained for 10 years in Black critical studies, in race, gender, and sexuality studies, and specifically in the study of racialization and whiteness, which is kind of the lens through which I view advertising and the kind of conversation that we're having today. And I suppose what drives me and what really gives me meaning and what I found really important to put out in the world and to consider when we do our work is the power of ideology and the power of language and words to shape and create practices, normalize certain ways of seeing each other, seeing the audiences that we talk to, seeing the customers that we serve, and ultimately asking how has language historically constructed what we assume is normal and who does the normal serve.
Love that.
Not.
Thank you. All right, Sam.
Is it my turn? So I'm Samuel Monnie. I used to call myself a reformed marketer, but now I see myself as a marketing reformer. And that's why I co-founded an organization called Purpose Hive. We're a strategic brand purpose consultancy. And for us, the thesis is you can have a positive impact on nature and humanity while being profitable simultaneously. You can have that impact and make money at the same time. It's not either or, it's both. And so whether it's DEI, biodiversity, gun rights, gun safety, women's rights, accessibility, ethical AI, sustainability, all of these things you can do and make money at the same time. You can possibly tell this is not a Bronx accent. I'm originally from the UK, but my heritage is Ghanaian. And what I found being of this skin color in advertising, in marketing, was I was often a unicorn in the room. I was often the other in the room. But my heritage, which means that I speak Ga, which is from Accra, the capital of Ghana. I understand better than I speak, but I speak that. Grew up in the UK, so English, British English. So I'm going to use some words you might not know, but roll with it. My heritage being, so Ghana, British, and then I lived in Switzerland, so I speak some bad French, and lived in Germany, and I speak some bad German. But I feel that those different experiences have given me this cultural sensitivity, this sensitivity to people, ideas, nuances, perspectives that just bring more to the table. And so when I think about the opportunity that this platform gives me, I'm so privileged and proud to be here because this is a highlight of my career, to be in a forum, in a space that's curated by us, for us, right? And owned by us as well. And the opportunity then to bring this to more people and actually showcase the best of what we do. And so from a marketer's perspective, I've often had to try and
give you 15 seconds more, Sam.
Okay, sorry. This is not a monologue. I've just been told. It's not a monologue. I've always tried to have a positive impact, and I think that's what shines throughout some of the things we'll talk about later.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Javier, thank you so much. I mean, you've worked on some cool stuff. We'll get into it.
But Javier, Farfan, thank you for having me. I'm a marketeer, professor. Half of my time I teach at Syracuse Newhouse. My other time I started an advisory firm called J. Wolf Advisors, and have clients like the NFL, Amazon Music, New Balance, and I try not to have the conversation about multicultural. I just let the work that I've done actually speak for itself and try to have conversations at a very senior level about growth. And I keep it there, and then, I kind of dive into those, I guess, businesses or opportunities as we think about the consumer.
It's not irrelevant what you just said, Javier, because I've seen it referred to as growth audiences as well instead of multicultural. So let's put a pin in that and keep that. So the next question, this is going to be fun. Now we're getting to the meat of it. I'm going to ask you all for your take, and I'm going to, at the end, have the audience vote with your opinion on the answer to this question. So get ready to form your opinion based on what our panelists are sharing. Does the way multicultural is used today have net positive or net negative impacts?
I'll start because nobody's saying. So it's been net negative for the past 20 years. One of the first things when I worked at Pepsi, one of the groups that I had to manage was the multicultural group, and I was like, look, I'm not going to call it that. And I started by calling it cultural branding. Did I know what that meant? No. But I just wanted to be provocative and just change kind of the way we were thinking, because I wanted to be not excluded and marginalized, but included into the process of brand building. And that was kind of my way into that.
Love it. Thank you.
Yeah, I struggle with the term. I obviously honor and respect the folks who play in that space. Obviously, multicultural marketing is a thing in a lot of organizations. They have departments and they have people. But in my lived experience, it tends to be at the end of the process. So you have this general market or total market mindset where the main agencies, get all the money, all the attention, and all the love. And then there's this bit, we need to talk to everyone else. And so there is that marginalization aspect that troubles me. And I feel that now we need to reclaim that. So some of the work we were doing research, I love the idea of underestimated audiences. I think that was Miles Worthington's definition, because that gives you power, that gives you agency, that gives you advocacy, that gives you momentum, and it also is you own that potential, right, of being underestimated. So I kind of prefer that language personally right now.
All right, we've got two alternatives on the table: cultural branding and underestimated audiences. Thank you.
I don't particularly love the distinction between positive and negative, partially because I spend a lot of time studying the history of advertising and studying the history of so-called multicultural marketing. So I don't want to discount it as negative, because I want to honor the people who coined the term, who were one of the first to push it into the marketing arena in the 70s, specifically in the 80s and the 90s. But I do think, to my earlier point, that it has an ideological function, and that's what language does. Language labels in a way to help us to make sense of things around us and to frame things in a particular kind of way. And so I think that the term, in terms of its negative impact, is that it labels audiences in a way that signals to awareness of diversity, and certainly increasing diversity in these growth segments, while also fulfilling the ideological function of treating audiences that we're talking about as non-threatening and underestimating their actual impact, influence, and centrality for businesses that we serve. So to me, the negative is really in that demarcation, in that labeling that is functioning to treat multicultural marketing as a niche. And if you're a niche, you could be sidelined, you could be erased, you could be underfunded, you could be neglected, and so on.
So well said. Thank you. Wow. And another thing I love about Dr. Gabriel, a dear friend of mine, is that she will always check me, and it's an important check. It's not negative, right? Even a lot of you sitting here today, the word is in your job titles, but it's, should there be an optimization we move towards? So thank you for that. All right.
I'm supposed to
Mr.
follow
Che.
that up? Is that what? That's
If you dare.
That's hard work. No, I think it's. I don't want to say negative. So it's not necessarily a negative thing, but I think it's an identifier as other, being othered, and I think it always, it nods to the fact of white being the baseline, and we don't really subscribe to that. The only Christopher we acknowledge is Wallace. So. We're in here making our own rules. For me, if I was going to come up with an alternative approach to it, I would say high impact audiences because it's not necessarily about
Wait, sorry, say that again.
high impact audiences.
That's good.
Because I think it's a matter of it's not necessarily the demographic of how many of us there are in this country or in a particular state or in a particular town, but what is the impact that we make on the marketplace, and that I said into my previous panel. Men lie, women lie, numbers don't. We can quantify the impact that our communities, our culture makes on these brands. And once we start playing by the numbers and we stop getting, pulling the race out of it and start pulling the biases out of it, and we can just start dealing with what is the impact that these groups of people are making on your brand, that's a different conversation.
I knew this was going to be juicy. Oh my goodness. Okay, so audience, it's your time to vote. You've heard high impact as an alternative cultural branding. You've heard a number of other things, and we're not talking about the specific terms now, but I want to know from you, do you think we have an opportunity to improve upon the language we use, which is multicultural marketing, to describe a wide swath of things? So those who think we have an opportunity to improve, raise your hands. Oh, wow, that is absolutely unanimous. Okay, well, I won't, you know what? Just in case there's someone who wants to spar today, anybody think we have no opportunity to improve and things should stay as is? That sounded leading, but I didn't mean it to. The space will remain safe, don't worry. All right, I knew there was going to be somebody.
Okay.
All right, yeah, let's go. Okay. Now I might keep it interactive.
Hi, I'll be a bit contentious in this. I believe it has more to do with the intention of the word versus the word itself. And I believe that if people have selfish and or malicious intent and wish to reframe something within their modicum of how they receive the world, be it I have more of a self-serving initiative in this, and I'm attempting to use the idea of multicultural to seem as though I'm including you when I'm really not. I think it has more to do with the human and less about the word. And I believe usually weaker humans hide behind longer words, just to be a bit of a dick about it, but I believe that's sorry, Mom.
Wow.
Can you say that again? What did you just said? What was that phrase you just said? Was it wicked humans?
I believe weaker humans hide behind longer words.
Well, multicultural isn't a particularly short word.
Agreed.
So,
So-
it's actually quite a mouthful. But it's a good point. And Mr. Wells, I love sparring with you on LinkedIn.
Thank you.
I just noticed it was you. An important point made. Anyone have a counterpoint? Don't disappoint me. Yes, with it. You? Mm-hmm. And we're going to go back to the panel. Don't worry.
Thanks.
Y'all hear me? All right, I'm Sequoia, founder of Jesus. All right, I'm Sequoia. I go by Database. I'm from Atlanta, holding it down. My challenge to that, though, I think, we see it here on this panel, is also the actual culture of where you're talking about. So in Atlanta, in the South, where black is, it's black, baby. I don't know how else to explain it. It's a very positive thing. A lot of us small agency owners would never get a chance to get to the general pop buy without the entry of multicultural advertising. Now,
point.
if you go across the pond where you're more into nationalities and ethnicities, that may be a little bit different for people that are abroad that actually know where their blackness came from. But for me as an agency owner, my biggest client right now, my first six-figure baby, I never would have had a chance if I did not show that I knew my people. I'm a researcher. I know what they're thinking. I see that we're not a monolith. We get into all these things. So I get it. I feel it. But I do think it's an entry point, and we have to start somewhere.
That's a great, great point. Thank you so much. That's exactly what we wanted. Okay, so let's continue the conversation. I'm going to start with Dr. Gabriel on this one, and anyone else who wants to answer, please jump in. No, I think if we keep it to two panelists, that'll help us move through, so you can compete for who's going to be the second. Dr. Gabriel, what are your thoughts on the historical context that has led us to the current norms we observe as far as how audience are segmented in terms of their relative proximity to whiteness?
I wrote a book this year, and I started specifically with...
Tell us the name of your book. Come on.
It's called Cultural Intelligence for Marketers, and part of what I started the book with is actually the historical context. And I think as strategists, as researchers, as marketers, we're often looking towards the future. What's trending, what's next, where the industry's going, what consumers want, et cetera. And within this conversation, I find that we don't often find history as relevant. And so as marketers, when we even think about multicultural marketing, if you go on Google and you ask or you search when did the term multicultural marketing originated in our discourse, you will get a response that it originated in the 80s and the 90s, right? When there has been a growth of non-white audiences, right? Black, Hispanic, Asian American audiences were finally on the map for marketers. Well, that erases all of the history for the preceding 2 decades when we see advertisers under pressure, very specific pressure from the civil rights leaders. And when I go around and talk to marketers, particularly an average marketer, and let's be real, white marketers that don't have connection to that history, they have no idea of the historical context that has actually led to this moment. And when we study the rhetoric of that particular era, and specifically look at advertising and marketing, and the way that the representation was being taken up, it's not so dissimilar from the kind of rhetoric we hear today. And I think that's very important to acknowledge when we think about dominant mainstream white stream spaces. And I particularly was stuck when I was writing the introduction to the book and I was doing my research, and I interviewed the person who was one of the first people who produced a study on Black representation in advertising in the mid-60s, and I was doing background research, and I was reading a journal article by a professor called William Boynton, who said that essentially, the multicultural, what now we call multicultural marketing, is a force that is coming into advertising to harness it for its own purposes. And what was particularly insightful about...
Wait, hold on a second, let's repeat that. Harness us for our own purposes.
Harnessing advertising for their own purposes. And what he said is that I find so... It gives me goosebumps to talk about in 2024. He says there are 3 rules of advertising that we need to remember. Find audience willing and ready to buy, produce advertising that works, and use media to reach those people. And then he says, and there is a 4th force in the marketing and advertising, 1965, he says, purpose. We're all, in debates around purpose, social responsibility right now, and it is still being treated as an intruder in marketing when we distinguish actual general marketing from inclusive marketing, social responsible marketing, multicultural marketing, and so on. And I find it important for us to be aware of that history to say, well, those are kind of the attitudes that were really normalized.
So 1965 was when we first heard purpose.
Yeah.
Wow. See, so whenever anybody says, oh, purpose marketing is just a reaction to George Floyd, tell them that.
Yeah, so, and all that is to say, I think the historical context is very important, even though as we make all this progress, et cetera, we have had conversations where, in certain stages that are really prestigious, where we are told to remove certain words that signal to inclusivity.
And that happened to you this summer?
That did.
Okay.
Yeah. So
We don't have to name the place, but.
History is important and knowledge is power. That's what I believe.
Amazing, thank you. All right, anyone else want to add before we go to the next question? And literally amazing, like we just went to HBS of marketing terminology, thank you.
Well, the word of purpose, so humble apology, I've read your book, right? And that didn't stay with me. So I'm now reflecting on, if purpose has been there from the get-go, then we need to, you said knowledge is power, right? We need to go back to the beginning and start to learn our history, because if purpose was always there, I'm biased, that's what my organization does, then what power can that give us going forward, and how we frame things, but also how we see reality? Because if you're saying it was always there, it's always important, then some of the stories now are saying is, things are being purpose washed or we're going too woke, but actually that was core and intrinsic from a property from the beginning. Let's reclaim what was always there versus trying to sort of put it inside or add it. So it should be built in, not bolted on, is basically the point I'm making.
So true, very good. Awesome. Okay, I hope everyone's feeling inspired. We're going to go to Mr. Agency Owner, Dabo. I mean, he's inspiring me with what he does, but also the outfit.
What about my outfit?
As an owner in the space, this I'm sorry, your outfit inspires me too, Sam. As an owner in this space, and we talked about an entry point, we're kind of drafting off that. This word has probably had a lot of impact in terms of your business, what projects you get. Tell us a little bit about the implications of that in your journey to sort of grow your business. How has the word multicultural impacted the kind of work you get?
Well, I don't want to age myself, but this is not my first rodeo. I have been around long enough to have seen the different iterations of what that word was. So I think when I first started kind of breaching into this market, it was called urban, right? It was, Dave, you were there, Dave. It was urban. It was urban. It was headed edge. It was cool. And then it was like, oh, the urban. Now that's stereotypical. Let's not do that. Let's talk about, multicultural. And I was like, okay, is that what we're calling it now?
Oh, so it was cutting edge.
Yeah, it was cutting. And so, I mean, I think even, I used to run Spike Lee's ad agency, Spike DDB, and that's funny enough.
Small flex.
Where it's where Javier and I first met. And Javier, I don't even know if you remember this, but I was trying to combat this. I was trying to disrupt that. And part of my whole thing was like, I didn't think Spike Lee's ad agency or any particularly black-owned agency should necessarily kind of be pigeonholed into multicultural or urban or whatever the next turn of phrase was going to be. So my whole thing was like, it's Spike Lee's ad agency. He's a filmmaker. He doesn't just make black films. He's a filmmaker. He's talking about storytelling and so on and so forth. And so I was like, well, what we're going to do is we're not going to say we're multicultural anymore. We have an expertise in talking to the new Americana. And so we would walk into rooms and be like, yeah, we talked to the new Americana. What's good?
Reclaiming Americana. I love that.
This was also during the time where Obama had just become president and the country was looking a lot different than the way it's looking right now. And so, there was a different energy, there was a different vibe, and it was a black man, and talking to the entire nation, talking about the direction of the country, and we were like, oh shit, we could claim this whole thing, right?
Ooh, I love it.
But the new Americana, like tapping into that we have real, it's not just about, Chevrolets and baseball and apple pie. This is also about the black experience here in Americana and how it's crafted the country that we now know. And so, that was
Literally crafted.
built from the ground up. And so that was definitely, I think, felt appropriate for the times. Now that I own my own agency, we like to say that we're a culturally led. We're a culturally led agency, and I think that's true to who we are, right? Like we can do advertising for any brand, for any market, but we always come from a place of that purpose that you spoke of. And that purpose has culture at the center of it. Like we love culture. We love those nuances. We love the ability to connect emotionally and build those bridges between brands and communities in a way that makes sense for that brand and for that community. We believe that these should be symbiotic relationships that brands and people have and the connections they have to them. So if we say we're culturally led, all we're saying is that we come from a people first place. Right? We're not here to talk about your brand and the P's and Q's of all the little things. We actually want to talk about how your brand improves the lives of people. And let's start there, brand, and then we can get to talking about you later. But first you have to understand why you're important to the audience that you want to talk to.
Oh, another masterclass. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. Okay, I hope everyone's feeling inspired. I'm going to go straight to Javier. And can someone give me a time check? Okay, so we're going to speed through this. Right. Javier, over to you. What's an inspiring example of work you've done or seen that benefited from precisely targeting audience?
I would say the work that I've been doing with the NFL the past 5 years, and we had a call earlier today, and we were just talking about the impact that it had with you and Super Bowl. The journey that I got to the NFL was I did some business with Rock Nation, and I was invited to help with the Miami Super Bowl, and it was interesting because they were like, Hobbs understands culture. His name is Javier. He probably knows the Latin thing. Figure it out. And, it's true, and that's how I got in. And then I started having a different conversation with the CMO, like, let's just understand what really is the opportunity. Like, what have you been doing? Have you been more kind of doing what you have to do versus, like, what really is the impact to your business? And I didn't do the sexy in the beginning, right? Usually you just want to do the creative and just get into it. I spent the year like understanding the business, right? Like what drives the business, what drives fandom, and really have conversations about the consumer. And that brought out the need, right? And then I'm still 5 years in, but the impact was more, I guess the impact was stronger because of that, right? Because then 2 years later, we're focused on a Super Bowl ad that really emphasized inclusivity with a Mexican flag football champion at the center of that storytelling. And the year after was, looking at a young kid from Africa. I didn't do the work. I'm an advisor, right? But, the conversations and the dialogue around inclusivity and understanding the impact of that storytelling that really has to go after an inclusive world, a global one, has created some really memorable moments that are differentiating the sport from what it was, right?
Can I just,
Absolutely. And Sam, I'm going to go to you now because it's your turn to answer. So you can tack on to this question what you wanted to share. But thank you, Javier. What's a cautionary example, after you're done commenting on the Ghana thing, because I know you're going to, of work you've seen that suffered from too broadly the opposite of what Javier discussed?
Yeah, so I'll build on that because I think there was a positive. So I was watching the Super Bowl. I was boycotting the ads because I have an issue with the Super Bowl ads. Historically, they've been kind of sexist and misogynistic, and they haven't engaged me during the Super Bowl. But so I was boycotting the ads, and I see this ad come on, and it's this little boy called Kwesi, and Kwesi is running through the streets and going through Accra, and I'm like, wait. Kwesi means born on Sunday. My middle name is Kojo, which means born on a Monday. So every Ghanaian boy or kid has a name related to the day of the week that they're born. So I'm watching this story and I'm thinking, wait, this is actually talking to me personally. That has never happened before. And so I'm mesmerized by this creative. So I'm just like touched. I'm getting emotional now, meeting the people who were responsible behind this, because it is actually possible to do things which are inclusive, representative, tell new stories that relate to other people. But I saw myself in that little kid. He was a bit lighter and a bit faster than me. But I saw myself in that little boy, right? Because his name was Kwesi. And my name is Kojo, so I could that finesse was something that was so personal. So that was done.
We know you love that. Sorry, I'm going to move you to the next question because we're running on time. Sorry, Sam, the cautionary example.
Cautionary tale. Now I'm going to speak in faster term. So working for a company which you probably guess what it is. This tagline is good. And we're talking about there's a new line of products which has got Disney princesses. All the Disney princesses are white. And so I raised, hey, how about having some diversity on your princesses? And, well, so you're going backwards and forwards, and then I noticed there's a mermaid. And so then we're getting into a conversation, which is a real story, real conversation about, you've got a mermaid. How about changing that? But then the discussion somehow moved to, well, all mermaids are white. I'm going, whoa. What are we doing now? So
that really happened, you guys.
It's a real story. So before you can get a black person or a brown person, you got a mermaid, which is half fish, half human, and we're now trying to negotiate to replace the mermaid. And I couldn't believe I was having this real conversation. So I think there are some real challenges, biases, or institutional perspectives. Like I'm arguing to replace a mermaid, and how come a mermaid has to be white as well? That was the question I kept asking, and I literally got like scared looks because there wasn't a rational response to that. So that's the problem of looking too broadly. You can't see solutions that are really in front of you.
Thank you. Okay, wow, this has been amazing. We're already running out of time, so I'm going to skip to the sort of coda of the whole thing. I want to know what your take is on the word that if you could create a new normal, carte blanche, what word would you replace multicultural with? And we've already come up with some, but where are you going to land? Everybody on the panel, please. And we're going to vote on it as an audience.
I'll just jump in, I suppose. I'm not as, again, not to push against your question, my dear friend.
Do it.
I am not interested in us creating another label. I think in certain instances we have to be specific about what audiences are we serving, what people are we talking about, which community they belong to, right? And be very specific and intentional about that. However, the last point I want to make is that when we also look at data and where the future of this country and around the world, but particularly the United States is headed, we can no longer afford to treat multicultural marketing as a niche, right? And I feel like that's what labels do, because if you look at the data from the US Census Bureau, young people who belong to 2 or more racial or ethnic groups are the fastest growing demographic segment in this country. When we look at current attitudes of consumers, already 51% of all US consumers say that the cultural preferences, the interests, the influences of historically excluded communities, so Black, Hispanic, Asian American, LGBT communities, they influence their brand preferences, and this goes up to 73% for millennials and 81% for Gen Z. And when we look at Generation Alpha, that is now 13% of the population and is going to reach adulthood by 2030, this is going to be the first minority white generation in the United States. So I guess to answer that question, do we need another label, or do we need to acknowledge the fact that diversity, multiculturalism has been the reality, the factual data-based reality of this country? And what are we doing when we're creating labels that are continuing to assert white dominance in this country and essentially minimize, erase the kind of growing diversity that is just the future? And to that,
Love that.
Multicultural marketing is marketing, full stop.
Thank you. Wow. Round of applause for Dr. Gabriel. Okay, gentlemen. And it's less picking a word, but more how do you think we should be navigating our go-forward state?
I'll keep it brief. Inspired by what you were saying, Anastasia, I'm going to just build on that and say undeniable. I just love that word. So if you call it undeniable marketing, that kind of, for me, that's hugely empowering.
Sam.
One of my favorite quotes is that the role of the artist is to make the revolution irresistible. And so we are marketers here. We build brands. We are salespeople. We know how to sell water to a well, fire in hell. So although I do believe that reprogramming people and kind of drilling them down and putting their face in it and be like, this is what it is, part of what we do here, and as marketers, we love to do, is to be like, let's reposition that. Let's dimensionalize that. Let's reset it. Let's put it in a contextual place that's not only, and you're absolutely right, aware and tethered to the past and tethered to history, but also is forward-looking and being like, okay, where are people right now? Because most people don't read, and we're fucked. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. Stop me.
That's right. You're in trouble now.
So anyway, I don't know. I don't know if I have another. I'm actually kind of liking the high impact.
I'm loving the high impact.
Because it's not like a baseline of like we're doing something different. It's like, no, go to where the impact is. And my man Don Romero over here, I want to give him the credit because in conversations in Blackweek, we've had so many conversations about what we're trying to do and why we're trying to do it and how we're trying to do it. And he said something one time in a meeting that we were in, and he was like, why is this an economic conference? Because we want people to invest in impact. And that has stuck with me, and I want to give you full credit for that, but I'm taking it and running with it. But I think that's brilliant.
You, Adon? Okay, you came up with that? Yeah.
I give credit where credit is due, but I'm taking it.
I love it. So, I mean, and it aligns with your thesis, right, Dr. Gabriel? It's sort of we're not reacting to whiteness. We are saying this is about growth. We talked about growth, high impact. That's one on the table for voting. Okay.
I mean,
you
guys said everything that I was going to say, so I would just say high impact growth, but I think I'm going to be just more pragmatic about it, and just from my career and my experience is, find allyship, that it's really going to be thoughtful about how they're thinking about the consumer and focus on young people. Young people get it, so they'll lift kind of that conversation to be a little bit more strategic.
Thank you, Javier. Love it. Okay, final word on this before we vote, Sam?
I think we covered it. I'm gonna switch to high impact as well now.
All right, and again, we're not shoving it down anyone's throat, but the question I'll pose to the audience is, do you agree, and if you don't, I'm gonna call on someone to share why not, that the idea of high impact audiences could be a positive way to move forward and sort of introducing that lexicon. We have Ad Age in the building, I think Brian's here, introducing that lexicon to our peers, and of course making sure it's well sourced. Show of hands, yes. Show of hands, no. Oh, okay, all right. And do I have 2 more minutes to hear from the no? Go ahead. Tell us why. If you said no, yeah. Okay.
Too late now.
The main idea I had truly here was that I don't know if, wait, pause. What was the question again?
No, okay, we'll come back to you. We
Yeah,
have
please
someone
come back.
burning.
Please.
Share back here. You, and then we'll go back to the panel for final thoughts.
Hello, everybody. I'm Q. So I own a production company where I represent directors, right, of all races. I don't like the idea of high impact because I think we don't have the system down yet of when we are sitting at the table or have those seats at the table to say to our clients, I understand my value and therefore we are worth X. It is a problem when we as creative entrepreneurs have to look at our black directors that have had Super Bowl spots and explain to them that for a black director, you are at the top of your game financially, but as a director compared to the majority, you are simply a director who's being paid. So I think what I would be looking for is staying with the term multicultural, but everyone having the confidence to sit their clients down and say, you either can afford us for our value or you cannot have us. Because all of that cutting corners and reducing costs to get the work done, for those of us that are in the multicultural space, it's just death to the industry. So I'm looking for confidence from the leaders that sit at those tables instead of changing the words that we're actually using.
Great point of view. Thank you so much. Okay, so really quick, here, and then I'll go back to you. Oh, never mind. That's fine. You're already there. We'll have you last. Thank you.
I have clarified my thinking. Okay, here's my thing. And I'm gonna, add on to what Dr. Gabriel said because I absolutely agree. I don't think changing the term changes the problem. Like at the end of the day, I think the issue is value for these audiences. And I understand high impact and all these terms underestimated. We're all kind of speaking to the idea that we're just not valued. Like there are so many audiences that are just not valued the way that they should be. And there's an idea that white audiences or Gen Pop audiences are highly valued, right? And so I understand wanting to find a term that communicates, hey, this is an audience that we should be giving more attention to or studying deeper. But I just don't think that solves the problem. I think when younger people are in these rooms and they're speaking, if you don't have senior leadership that cares about what they have to say, or you don't have people who in senior leadership that are diverse, that are valued in these spaces, it kind of doesn't matter. And if we look at the data, like you said, this country is becoming browner and browner. And so marketing has to change anyway, and so it will change. So I'm not sure if we need to change multicultural. I think Gen Pop will have to change to multicultural.
Okay, then. I love that. Okay, final thought.
Hello. Everything that's been said, I think, is great. I'm going to keep it simple. Culturally led. Wherever we're going, if I'm a culture, then you're speaking to me. It's not identifying a whole, you're speaking to an individual based on their culture, because now that's very personal. So we have to look at that, I believe, in a concept when you're advertising, and when something is identifiable, it's coming directly to me within my culture. And that's pretty much what Dr. Gabriel was saying. Everyone said pretty much the same thing, but I like the culturally led.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited because I think we've gotten to, as a panel, as an audience, a consensus. If not in word choice, we've gotten to a consensus that it's really not about that. It's about making sure how we talk about what we do when we're including historically excluded people in our work is meant to be not reactive to the paradigm of whiteness. And however you do that, it might be about culture in the particular context, it might be about financial impact in a particular context, but make sure you are honoring the audience in the way that you talk about them. And I think that's gonna help us avoid the cautionary tales that Sam shared. So thank you so much. I'm gonna ask the panel for a final thought, and if you could also share where the audience can reach you. This is all about interacting. I wanted to bring a more family-oriented panel to the table where there is no line between us. So I'm hoping that everyone in the audience follows up with you guys and we can keep the conversation going. Let's just go down the list.
My final thought really is about, Blackweek was built for having that connectivity that we're talking about. We don't want to build just another conference. We want people to be able to come here, find community, find fellowship, and to be able to build with folks. This is about coming together in the power of the unity and I think if you're here, there's something inside of you that is craving for more and that is craving for connection, and we want you to find that here. If you don't find it here, keep looking. Like find your people and build and find your communities, find your spaces, and make more space for other folks. So that's the only thing. I'm very humbled by the fact that all of you have come out of your way and made time in your day to spend it with us. So I'm just humbled. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
At the risk of repeating myself or hammering in the same message, I think in marketing we often see ourselves in our own bubble, and I guess my final thoughts are real people don't think about brands the way that we do. And for that reason, and also for the reason of influence that brands have in culture, it seems imperative for us to really start seeing ourselves as part of a larger struggle that is happening in this country. And so I guess the final thought of everything that we talked about is really understanding that as we struggle over meaning within our industry, we're part of a struggle that is happening outside of the walls of our industry for diversity, equity, inclusion, for honoring people who are on the margins that have been historically. And so for that reason, I think it's important for us to expand our, what I call, frame of reference and start seeing ourselves as literally fighting the neo-segregationist forces that are pushing against this industry and the society from that point of 1965 to today, which is why I always say we need to understand who has come before us and who has come before them so that we can chart a new, different path forward.
Who's not following her on LinkedIn after this? Come on. Thank you, Dr. Gabriel.
I'm trying to think how to follow that, but a quote comes to mind from a friend of mine called Amir Gumnard. I'm going to say these words, but take it from where you're sat. It's, I am the one, and it's not about me. That's kind of what I'd love from that sort of activist. I am the one, but it's not about me.
I love that. Sam, thank you. And you showed us you can do succinct with that.
So I think on my side, the only thing I would say is marketing is being redefined very aggressively now, everything about it. I think we have a superpower being a person of color or understanding the idea of culture in this new space, because it's about community building now more than ever with all the new technology and stuff like that. So I think it's leaning into that superpower and finding the right allies and focusing on young people. I think you'll get to a different place.
Wow, well, thank you so much. I mean, I've learned a lot. I hope you all have learned as much as I have in this session. Thank you to a glorious panel. Thank you to a magnificent audience. And let's keep Blackweek going.
Thanks, everybody.